Hello fellas! In today's video, if you couldn't read, we're going to be making a model of the Port of Tillamook Bay cow train. Now you may be asking, what is the Port of Tillamook Bay number 101 cow train? And to that I say, your days are numbered. Start running. The Port of Tillamook Bay number 101 cow train is a GP-9 painted in a custom livery to make it look like a cow. Look at it, it is so silly! If my information is correct, then this engine was originally built for the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad in 1956. It wore the railroad's livery and had the number 6006. 30 years later, in 1986, it was sold to the Huron and Eastern Railroad, where it gained the number 101 and got a new paint scheme. It worked there for 6 years until 1992, where it was sold to the Idaho Northern and Pacific Railroad, but unfortunately I couldn't find an image. It worked there for 3 years until 1995, when it was sold to the Port of Tillamook Bay Railroad. There, it still retained its 101 number, and then was painted into its final cow train paint scheme. And the site I'm reading says it was nicknamed the Moo. Come on, just call it cow train. I have absolutely no clue why the Port of Tillamook Bay Railroad even decided to paint it in that color scheme, but it did. And that is so cool. But anyway, 11 years later, it was finally sold to the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad, where it remains today with its paint scheme and number unchanged. But you may be wondering, why do I like this train so much? You best be running, 'cause every second you're not, I'm only getting closer. Well, it all started when my friend decided to visit the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad. That's when he first saw a cow train in all of its rusty glory. Future me here. Apparently I was under the impression that cow train is just rusty and abandoned, but no, apparently they just started every couple of months. So yeah, that's cool. He became interested in it because he was trying to find it for a while. He thought it was at the Tillamook Air Museum, but apparently not, and he finally found it on the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad. A couple of years later, in 2024, he came back to visit it and took a couple of pictures. Then he decided to post them on the Discord server, and when we saw a train with a cow paint scheme, it was perfect meme material. Suddenly, me and this guy started obsessing over this train just because of its paint scheme. Every time we walked by each other in the hall in real life, we would spot each other from a mile away and lock eyes. And then we just yell, "Cow train!" We would do this every single time we saw each other. So yeah, that's why I like that engine so much. And I liked it enough to... Now at first I checked if there were actually any O-scale models being sold of it, but no. There was never an O-scale model of this train ever made. The only models I found were these two made by a Reddit user called Jan Tro. So if I wanted a cow train model, I was gonna have to do it myself. And the problem was that I have pretty much zero experience with customizing trains. But hey, you can't become a professional if you don't just dive straight into it one day, so I just started looking for a cheap GP-9 for me to customize. And eventually I found it. This should be it. Let's see here. Nice. That's big. Look at this. Alright. Let's read it. Didn't come with a box, unfortunately, but it's fine. It's all good. I don't need a box. You can like a box. Oh, look at this. Ho ho ho. It's beautiful. Let's put it on the track. Good, good, good. Oh, plug her in. Okay, let's see here. Oh. Okay. Zoom in backwards. Can it go the other way? Oh, it has a loud horn. Can I make it go backwards though? So it has two switches on the back. No idea what they mean, but I'll try flicking them until it is normal.
Okay, after flicking one switch, it now has conventional running. God, that horn is loud.
So yeah, now that I confirmed that it works, I just needed to see what modifications I needed to make. First off, my model had this orange Lego piece looking thing on the roof, which was not present on the actual cow train. Secondly, it had horns on the sides when it was supposed to actually have them on the roof. Third, it obviously had a different number, so I had to sand that off. And fourth, the donger.
Are you gonna add Caltrain's donger?
Yes.
The bell was actually from my Polar Express after it broke off, so now I guess I'll just put it on Caltrain. But anyway, I pried it open and removed all the detachable details like the horn and the Lego piece looking thing and also the number decals. I also popped off the shell and used it as a weapon. I took out the glass and then I sanded off the numbers, but I didn't actually have sandpaper, so I just used a blade from a broken pair of scissors. It worked. And then it was time to figure out the... First things first, I observed the cow train and found out that the colors I'd need are black, white, brown, yellow, and a bit of orange. They also needed to be matte so that they're a bit more realistic. So we picked up the paints from the art store and here they are. We also put a blue in there in case I needed to mix any of them to make a specific color. But after that I realized I needed primer, so I went to Home Depot and picked up some primer and also some sandpaper for future projects. So after that I just took the shell outside and began priming. Oh yeah, and before this I realized that I should probably prime some more parts of it, like the handrails and the base, and just cover up the electronics so that I could paint on more of it easier. The primer did end up cracking a bit on the roof of it, but it's probably my fault. I could now use the primered Caltrain shell as a weapon as well, so I did. After waiting a while for it to fully dry, I put it back together to see if the spray paint broke it anywhere. God damn it, I forgot to put in the cover. Now for the other details.
Alright, let's test if the spray paint completely broke it. One works. And it runs. Oh.
And after all that finagling, I finally had a canvas on which to make Caltrain. And now I'm going to be... Ha! You thought I was gonna say painting. No, I thought so too. But then I realized that I was probably gonna have to put on the details first before I paint to make it easier so I could just paint it all at once instead of having to paint the separate parts as well. The Caltrain had longer railings than on the model, so I was gonna have to modify them a bit so that they were accurate. Maybe I should have left them alone and it wasn't worth it, but I did it anyway. I brought out the hot glue gun and some snippers and got to it. I snipped off the railing and showed the camera how I wanted them to be, but then I came to a problem. The hot glue was not holding the metal on. Oh no! Okay. I have a soldering iron. I'll try soldering it on. That's what metal needs, right? Soldering, yeah, not hot glue. Who would ever use hot glue? That's for idiots. Long story short, it didn't work. So I tried the last resort. The 3D pen. That old thing that's been sitting in my wardrobe for months, and you probably never heard of. It's kind of like a 3D printer, but manual. You get the gist. And to its credit, it didn't completely fail. It actually managed to hold it together. For about 2 seconds until I lightly tapped it and it crumbled to dust like Spider-Man in the Avengers. So clearly, all the metal I snipped off was pretty much doomed. But I had a 3D pen. I could just draw out the handrails and details I needed, and sure, it probably wouldn't turn out that good, but it's better than having nothing there at all. So I drew them out, and they're definitely flimsy, but not as flimsy as all the other options. And they're a bit goopy looking, but I guess I can somehow fix that. And again, it's better than having nothing there at all. As you can see, I also used the 3D pen to fill in the hole on the roof and the holes where the horns were. I also added this droopy thing to simulate the chain in between the handrails. I made the stand for the bell and some holes for the horns, and bing bang boom, it was done. Except for the little lights below the railings. I'll add that in one day. But for now, it is finally time for... Now, the first thing I did was disassemble the engine yet again, and redo a bit of the details a bit so that they're more accurate and sturdier. I then taped off the parts that I wanted to make sure didn't get any paint on them, aka the electronics. Then I put a cover over a table and brought out my supplies, then put all the parts on the table, and then I put my paints on the mixing sheet. And with that, I put on some Eric's trains and started painting. Now, my logic going to this was to paint on the black first because the white on Caltrain was more like splotches, and I thought that splotches would be easier to paint after the base color is there. So what I do is paint on the black, and then paint on the white later after it dries. One problem I thought of even before starting painting was there were no pictures I could find of Caltrain's roof because, well, how are you gonna get a picture of a train's roof when you're just a tiny human on the ground and this thing is towering over you? But then I saw this picture and there's this tiny little glimpse of black on the roof. So from there it was just safe to assume that the roof is all black. One thing I discovered about Caltrain while painting is that on one side, the white parts seem to be the splotches, while on the other, the black parts are. So it's like they couldn't make up their mind while painting it and decided to have opposite sides.
Damn it.
I decided to paint the wheels and the coupler in a bit of a rusty color because I'm pretty sure that's how it's been since it came to the port of Tillamook Bay Railroad. When I started painting on the white, that's when I found out that my initial logic of splotches first equals easier was completely wrong because after I added the white, it looked pretty sloppy. I'm gonna have to go back in afterwards with some black to touch it up. By the way, in some scenes you can see me going in with a flashlight. That's just so I can see the sloppy stuff I made and fix it up. So, I am just seeing this now in editing, but what was my cat doing up there? He's not allowed there, get down!
How do HO modelers do this?
Now, it looked fine, but it was still missing the...
Yes, officer. This is the part that broke me. Shoot it. Kill it. Please.
My first idea with this was to make a paper the size of what decal I needed, draw what I need onto it, and then cut out what I needed. And in this case, I was making the numbers. And as you can see, they are frickin' tiny. I barely managed to draw the numbers on them, and when I tried to cut them out, it completely broke and I didn't even take a picture of it because of how embarrassing it was. So then I tried to make one of those but for these orange things so I can have practice with an easier version. It ended up completely failing, and again I didn't take a picture of it, so then I tried taping it off and then peeling off the tape later after I painted on it. And it wasn't the worst thing in the world, and if you think it is, then be glad I forgot to take those pictures. So then I tried hand painting it, and it turned out to be the best one. But if I wanted to do the numbers and letters, I'd still definitely need those sheets because I do not trust my paint to make those exact letters.
Why don't you just use a printer?
Because I don't know how! I think I might need a printer.
Okay, I was definitely gonna need help on this, but anyone who can help me won't be here for a while, so I don't know what I'm gonna do in all this time. So if I was gonna print out the lettering, then I needed a file that I could actually print. So after a ton of measurements, reference photos, and drawings, here it is. This image goes hard, feel free to screenshot. One thing I realized while making the lettering is that on some pictures it says Port of Tillamook Bay, the full name, while on other more recent ones it just says Tillamook Bay. And I was originally going to write out the whole thing, Port of Tillamook Bay, but then I realized that the version I'm making, the modern one, only has Tillamook Bay on it. So I'm glad I noticed that. I sized it all down so that it's accurate to actual scale on how it will be on the model. Then I got taught how to use a printer, and damn, that was easier than I thought. Sorry, buddy. So now I had a colorless version of all the lettering in person now, so I tested it out on the Caltrain, and it fit more perfectly than I ever could have hoped for. So now, with even more drawing, reference images, and measuring, I got the colored version. This image also goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. I didn't add the tiny numbers on the colored version because the colorless version already had the numbers in the color that I needed, so I just glued those onto there. I scaled down the colored version and printed it out, cheaply glued them all onto there, added the final sign, and quickly made a new handrail right here, and finally put it on the track. Caltrain is finally done! Now, is it perfect? No! This thing has a ton of inaccuracies. But is it good enough for me? And really good for my first custom I ever attempted? I'd say so. This thing started off as a little joke that didn't even make that much sense, and probably still doesn't if I'm honest. I don't know why we're jokingly obsessed with it, but hey, I got a cool model out of it, so yippee! It's also a really smooth runner. One of the best in my collection, I'm pretty sure. Oh, and you probably didn't make out many details of it in the edit, so here's just some footage of it running.
So yeah, that was my silly video on making a model, and overall, I'm really happy with it.
Cow train! Cow train!